The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
The RCMP Heritage Centre is a not-for-profit charitable organisation mandated to share the story of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This is one of those stories, part of your heritage.
So my first transfer took me to Burnaby Detachment, and I was there a year and 6 months. And while I was in Burnaby, I spent 3 months on foot patrol in North Burnaby, walking the beat from 9 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning, checking doors and premises. And then I graduated to a patrol car, and I was on general duty for about a year. And then I was transferred from general duty to the traffic unit in Burnaby. And I was only on the traffic unit a short time when I had a visit from Staff Sergeant Rattan, and he had selected me to go on a motorcycle course in Cloverdale. And so I went on the a motorcycle course in July of 1965. No, I'm sorry, 1966. And after passing the 2-week motorcycle course, I came back to Burnaby Detachment, and in October of 1966, I was transferred to Patella Bridge, and we were 6 young men stationed there on bikes, on Harleys, doing patrol duties on Patella Bridge and traffic duties. Well, the Patella Bridge is the bridge. It's the principal link between the city of New Westminster and the municipality of Surrey, BC. New Westminster, BC has their own municipal police force, and Surrey, BC is policed by the RCMP. But the bridge, the Patella Bridge, is policed by the RCMP because of the high number of traffic accidents caused by the narrow lanes. It's a 4-lane bridge, and because of the high number of accidents, sideswipes in particular, the RCMP in those days had a full detachment of 6 members doing motorcycle duties on the bridge, so that we could respond quickly to traffic accidents. And that was our main job, was to respond to traffic accidents on either side of Patella Bridge and investigate sideswipes. Now, in a lot of cases, they were sideswipes, but in a lot of cases, they develop into hit and runs by the nature of the accident, because one car would be going towards New Westminster, the other car going towards Surrey, and in heavy traffic flow, when the cars had an opportunity to pull over to the other side, on each side of the bridge, they couldn't contact each other. And if the drivers had a description of the car, of the other car in the sideswipe, we could more often than not match up to 2 drivers, because what they did is very often called in the details to the detachment, and we were able to clear the accidents simply by matching up to 2 drivers. And so it wasn't so much a case of hit and runs as it was of drivers getting their coordinates together and exchanging details. Now, there was cases where people tried to commit suicide by jumping off the bridge. Now that didn't happen while I was there, but it had happened previously to my experience at Patella Bridge. So I was there for a year. I was there from October 1966 to October 1967, and every day, all my service at the bridge was an experience of driving the Harley motorcycle, and it developed my lifelong love for motorcycles and Harleys in particular. And I was quite pleased to be chosen one day by Sergeant Mercer to drive down to Healy Motors in Vancouver and pick up the first push-button automatic start Harley that had been issued to the force. And so Sid Slade drove me down to New Westminster, down to Vancouver to Healy's, and Fred Healy, the owner, showed me how to start this new bike with the push-button starter, and gave me a little bit of a lesson in the parking lot of Healy Motors, and then I was set free to drive this fully equipped new RCMP bike back to Patella Bridge. And it was quite an evolution in bikes from the kickstarters that I had been trained on and the kickstarters that had been posted to Patella Bridge while I was there. And so I left Patella Bridge in 1967, and I was transferred to Maple Ridge. And in those days, Maple Ridge was called Haney Detachment, and we were 19 single members. And I went to Maple Ridge and was assigned to General Detachment with the other members. And after a year of general duty, I was selected again to give birth to a new traffic detail, municipal traffic detail in Maple Ridge. And so about 1968, the municipality of Maple Ridge provided enough funds for us to have one position on traffic and a car. And my last 2 years in Maple Ridge were devoted entirely to traffic duties and investigating fatalities. And I recall, apart from the general police duties, which I did when I first arrived, that I investigated very tragic car accidents involving young people, teenagers, usually sometimes around graduation time in May and June. And I recall grieving with parents of young people who were killed in traffic accidents in Maple Ridge. And I recall too that we were all, the majority of us were single men. And yes, we were 19 on the detachment, but when you break that out and consider time off and courses, that it left us with 2 men on general duties, on shift, and myself on traffic, in a fairly large municipality. Now, the population may have only been 25 or 30,000 people at that time, but the municipality of Maple Ridge extended from Coquitlam, from the Pitt River Bridge, right down to the Mission border. So the geography of the area was as big as Surrey, but it didn't have the population and the density that Surrey had. But the jurisdiction was absolutely huge. And in order to get from, in order to respond on a call from the Mission border, the Mission Maple Ridge border, over to the Coquitlam side of Maple Ridge, it would take 40 minutes or 45 minutes. to respond. So the responsibility, I remember, was quite demanding because of the nature of the calls and because of the geography. And I recall my time on general duty and some of the calls that I went on with very few members. I recall one armed robbery that we responded to at a local hotel, and after the armed robbery, the suspect had time to throw his weapon into the river. And so there we were, three members, including myself. And fortunately, one of the members on the detachment was a scuba diver. And now this is in the days before scuba diving had become in vogue in the RCMP. There weren't any rules and regulations about workplace safety. But he quickly ran home and donned his scuba equipment and came and was able to find the weapon, to the astonishment of the suspect, because the suspect thought that nobody would ever find the knife that had been used in the robbery. And it was only because the members on the detachment had incredible skills that they were able to use, sometimes in police work. But there was incredible diversity in the skills that members had. Some members were artists, some were great singers, some were former plumbers, some were carpenters, some were very good report writers. And it seemed to me that every member on the detachment had a certain forte that he could demonstrate to the benefit of other members. I enjoyed public speaking, and the superintendent of schools, Mr. Holmes, would take me to all 26 schools in the municipality of Maple Ridge twice a year. In the fall and in the spring, he and I would team up and we would do safety talks at all of the schools in the municipality, as well as the 3 high schools, and talk about safety at crosswalks and ensuring that children walk and be safe on their way to and from school. So whenever the staff sergeant needed somebody for public speaking or for speaking to the Rotary Club or to the Lions, I usually was the guy that was chosen to go and talk about some aspect of traffic. So I left the West Coast after 5.5 years. Very unexpectedly, there was a system in place at that time called a maritime rotation system. And out of the clear blue, 9 of us from British Columbia were chosen to rotate back to the East Coast. And we were all Maritimers. And so I had the impression that I was going to retire probably in E Division. And unexpectedly, this transfer came to me, as well as 8 of my friends in E Division. And I was transferred back to Prince Edward Island. Some members went to Nova Scotia. Some went to New Brunswick. 2 of us went to L Division, and a couple went to B Division. And I was transferred to Charlottetown in 1970, And I was assigned to the Highway Patrol unit in Charlottetown, and we were 7 members. And I was the senior constable when I arrived on the Charlottetown Highway Patrol. And that was a very different experience because of the total different nature of police work on the East Coast from the West Coast. My first 5.5 years had been on the Lower Mainland in very, very, very busy jurisdictions. And the detachments on the West Coast that I had been posted to were all big detachments. Burnaby at that time was 100 members. But Patella Bridge, we were 6, and in Maple Ridge, we were 19. There were no detachments that size on the East Coast. So I went to Charlottetown Highway Patrol, and our Highway Patrol were responsible for the center county in Prince Edward Island, Queens County. And it was another huge jurisdiction, but very, very lightly populated, because Charlottetown City had their own city police force, and we were responsible for the Highway Patrol accident investigations outside the city of Charlottetown. And so I spent 3 years there, and that was another fascinating look at how police work is done on the East Coast, because in addition to highway patrol duties, we were also expected to back up the general duty guys at investigations, especially on night shift. And it was also while I was there that the CO chose me to very often be his driver on VIP visits. So I had the honor to be a driver for the Queen Elizabeth when she visited Canada in 1973. And I also had the opportunity to drive other officials who visited the island and paid a visit to Superintendent Pantry. And by this time, I was growing in service. I had 8 years service, and I realized that to become a corporal, I needed a minimum of 12 or 13 years service. But I was starting to think about what I wanted to do, and I had an interest in public speaking and in teaching. And in my previous 8 years, I had done a lot of public speaking and a lot of instructional duties to other members. I had been a coach, field coach several times for other recruits, and I felt very, very rewarded. My career was a match for me, and to think that I had graduated from high school and had already served in a variety of different jobs in the force in British Columbia, and now I was in Prince Edward Island, and I was ready to look for another new experience. And I went off to Depot Division, and that was, once again, purely coincidental. As it turned out, the personnel officer in Fredericton had been a patient in the hospital in Fredericton. And his attending nurse was my sister. And when she learned that he was the personnel officer from Fredericton, she said to him, if you do go to Charlottetown on duties, look up my brother, Joe, is in Charlottetown. And that's exactly what he did. He made a trip over to Charlottetown to interview some members, and one of the members that he interviewed was me. And he said to me, had you considered ever going back to Depot as an instructor? And I was thunderstruck, because I had my sights aimed at another transfer, probably to a larger highway patrol, and never thought about the possibility of being offered an opportunity to go back to Depot. But he did select me, and I came to Ottawa on the 2-week instructor's course, and met 20 other friends who were also destined to go to Depot. And yes, I went to Depot in 1973, and that was a 3-year stint. So I was transferred from Charlottetown Highway Patrol, and I was transferred to Depot in the academic unit. And I was in Depot for 3 years, and in those days, listeners will recall that we circulated 1 year in human relations, 1 year in criminal law, and 1 year in operational techniques. So I started off in criminal law, and taught criminal law for a year, and I did exactly what my former instructors had done to me. I taught by story, and so I would talk about powers of arrest, and then I would relate to the recruits about how I had handled cases myself, and how I had successfully been able to arrest the person without a struggle, and how I had done my court brief, and how I had presented evidence in court. And the second year I was in Depot, I went to human relations, and that area of work was usually the area of work where police officers intervene in family conflict, along with public relations and community involvement. And once again, I taught by story, and was able to relate to the recruits, I hope, by explaining to them situations that I had found myself in, and told them how I handled various conflict situations, family fights, in which the police officer is very, very apprehensive about approaching the house, the likelihood that you're under surveillance as you approach the house, the possibility that, that there's a weapon involved, a caution about not standing in front of the door for fear of being shot through the door, a caution about keeping surveillance on the occupants in the house once you enter the house, the importance of separating whoever it is that's fighting or struggling, and police officer techniques for staying alive. And in my second year, I was also chosen to be a supervisor for the second female troop of women. That was Troop 36. That was an evolution in policing also that had never been thought of until 1974, when the first women arrived in Depot. First class was 17 troop, the second troop was 36 troop, and the CO selected me as a troop supervisor. And I was a pioneer in the sense that I depended on everybody else for help because I didn't have the answers about the care and management of women in policing. But it was a rich and a rewarding experience. The women graduated and went on and became pioneers in their own way in various aspects of policing. So I left Depot with fond memories, very, very deep memories. And I was very sad when I left because it was the highlight of my career. I was promoted to corporal in 1973. And became very deeply involved in life at Depot, led the choir for 3 years in the chapel, met thousands and thousands of incredible young people who wanted to devote their lives to the RCMP. And as the years went by, many or most of them left their mark. And then in 1976, I said farewell to Depot and was transferred. And I was transferred to the VIP section in A Division in Ottawa. And there again, that was another whole new vista in my career. I had been on a couple of VIP visits, both in British Columbia and in Charlottetown, but I had not been a part of the regular structure. There was not a VIP unit in Maple Ridge, nor was there in Charlottetown. But when I came to Ottawa in 1976, there was about a 16-man VIP unit, and I was assigned to the first family, the Trudeau detail. And my first assignment was to Harrington Lake, and I spent 6 months at Harrington Lake, and during which time Mrs. Trudeau and the children were infants at that time. And so I spent 6 months at Harrington Lake on day shift while Mrs. Trudeau and the children were there. And then after 6 months, around December of 1976, I was transferred downtown, A Division VIP section, and I spent the last 6 months of my one-year term with Mr. Trudeau and Paul Ouellette and Henry Kennedy, and the three of us were responsible for the protection of Mr. Trudeau in 1976. And then, just as unexpected as my transfer from British Columbia to Charlottetown, I was asked to report to the personnel officer, and I was interviewed for a promotional move to the opening of the Canadian Police College in 1976. And so I arrived at the Canadian Police College in 1977 after spending a year on the VIP section. And I was promoted to sergeant, and I occupied a position at the Canadian Police College for 3 years. And the first year I was at the college, I was a part of the team that did instructional techniques. And then I spent 2 years on management studies and SPAC, Senior Police Administration course. And that was solely and strictly instructional duties. And it just broadened my view from the academic perspective about studies in management, in the field of management. In 1980, I was transferred again, and I was transferred to the airport in Toronto. And to many, that would not have been an appealing transfer. But it stands out to me as an incredible opportunity because I was back in uniform.